Hi friends, welcome back to Brianna's Bookshelf. So it is almost the end of September. It is September 29th as I'm filming this. So I figured I would film my September wrap up. I read 6 books in the month of September, which I feel like is probably on the low to average side for me. There is a reason it was low. I feel like I read a lot of big books this month, and I did complete my Throne of Glass tandem read this month, so that definitely slowed me down at the beginning of the month a little bit. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of my thoughts on each book, starting from lowest rated and going up to my highest rated. So my lowest rated book was Mile High by Liz Tomforde, and I gave this 2 stars. So I previously read The Right Move by Liz Tomforde a few months ago, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars. Like, I was on here talking about how it was like my new favorite contemporary romance, and that is the second book in this interconnected standalone series, the Windy City series. And I'd heard some less positive things about the first book, but it seemed like some people still really liked it, and I was like, I'm just gonna go back and read the first one, and then I can just continue through all of them if I wish. And yeah, I was not a fan of Mile High. So the main reason was the male main character, Xander, was just extremely irritating to me. Like, he was definitely the player kind of male character, which is just really not my type. And sometimes it can be okay, I feel like, if the main character is just like joking around about it, but not really going into any sort of detail about like their actual kind of playboy lifestyle. But I feel like Xander was very explicit about his hobbies, shall we say, and I did not love that. That just like rubbed me the wrong way right away. And just in general, I feel like he was so obsessed with himself, and there was like therapy rep in it, but I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely not a therapist, so I can't diagnose whether Xander's level of ego is good or not, but I did not enjoy him as a character. Then we did have Stevie as the female main character, and I enjoyed her. I thought she was a really great main character, and it went a lot into like body insecurity and stuff like that. But unfortunately, it just like wasn't enough to make me get over Xander's personality. And yeah, I just wasn't that excited about the two of them together. Just didn't really have a good time. Was just hoping to get through it basically. So it's a 2 star, unfortunately. And Stevie, she brought it up from a 1 star to a 2 star, that's for sure. Then moving up to 3 stars, I have Annihilation by VanderMeer. This is a short little kind of horror sci-fi book, and this is following a group of explorers who go on an expedition to this place called Area X, which is basically like an area that's been environmentally contaminated and no one really knows what's going on there, but it's totally like separated from the rest of society. And so we're just following the main character as she goes on this journey and like kind of what she finds there. And it's definitely a weird book in the way that it's written. The writing style is very interesting. At times the language is like so plain, and then other times feels like kind of like over the top or flowery at times. So it really went back and forth, and there were aspects that I liked a lot about it. Like the talk about like the different plants and animals, and how Area X itself kind of felt like this like liminal and kind of like vaguely threatening place. Like, it had good atmosphere, but the writing, I mean, there was parts of the writing that I really loved, and then parts that I couldn't stand and like couldn't follow. So it was very like back and forth for me. So I had to land in the middle with the 3 star on this one. Then I did complete my Throne of Glass tandem read this month. So that is where you read Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms at the same time, alternating the books with various chapters, because they do take place at the same time. And thankfully I finally finished that. It was quite a lot to get through because both books are like 700 pages. And I am giving Tower of Dawn 3 stars because I definitely did not enjoy this one as much. While I was doing my tandem read, I feel like every time I got to Tower of Dawn, I was kind of just like hoping to get through it quickly so I could go back to Empire of Storms, because I feel like that was where the majority of the plot was happening, and Tower of Dawn honestly just felt way too long. Like, it kind of felt like filler, to be honest. And I am just not that into Kale as a character, which I think is kind of a popular opinion, to be honest. I feel like most people don't seem to be that into Kale. I mean, he's fine. This maybe slightly increased my opinion of him, but overall it was just way too long. We didn't need to go into all of this. We didn't need to have every side character having their own romance. It just felt really unnecessary at times. There was a few fun aspects in it. It wasn't all bad by any means. That's why it's a 3-star. I feel like there was still, like, we learned new things. There was some important things that happened. But honestly, I feel like this whole saga that happened in this book could have been just like shortened down to perhaps a novella where just the important things that happened in this happened, and everything else we could just get rid of, and it would have been totally fine, I think. So, not my favorite in this series. Moving up to my 4-star reads, Empire of Storms, however, is a 4-star for me. I definitely enjoyed this more than Tower of Dawn. It still felt like it dragged a little bit to me. I think that may just have been the act of the tandem read, though, that it was like just kind of tedious overall. But there's definitely a lot that happened in this book. Yeah, that's all I could really say. I don't want to like give away anything in the plot since this is like the second to last book in this series. But yeah, so much happened. This is thick, but thick for a reason. Like, everything that happened was important. We were following all sorts of different characters in Sarah J. Maas's usual style, you know, and this definitely wasn't one of my favorite of her books by any means, but I do feel like this did a lot with the story and pushed it forward, and it left us into a very interesting point in which I am quite excited to finally get Kingdom of Ash, because I think that there's so much that has to happen in that book for there to be any sort of resolution, and I think it's going to be pretty crazy. So I feel like this really set that last book up really well to be like an insane read. Then my other 4-star for the month of September was Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh. Now, this is one that I see getting a lot of polarizing opinions, and I could totally see why. I feel like this is a very character-focused book. We are following the character of Eileen, who is a young woman who is living, I think this is like in the 60s, I want to say. And she lives in a small town, and she works basically at a juvie center as kind of an office worker there. And she has a fairly boring life to start with. Her father's an alcoholic. She like doesn't have any money really. She kind of hates her life, and she doesn't really like herself either, but at the same time she's somewhat obsessed with herself, which is a very interesting dynamic to follow. The way that she describes her life, I mean, lots of the things that were happening were boring, yet I enjoyed them in the way that it was described. So I think that's maybe one of those things where it's like either the writing style clicks with you or it doesn't. And then the actual point of the story came in when Eileen became obsessed with this other woman, and that kind of just like spiraled into this whole situation, and it was definitely not what I was expecting, and it was pretty random and weird, but I enjoyed it. And I feel like it really kind of covered like how Eileen had such an obsessive personality, and she was like obsessed with this other girl that she met, and I feel like that can be relatable in having those kind of like strange obsessive relationships that maybe like take on more of your mental energy than they should, especially like as you're younger. I feel like in like a coming of age kind of situation, those kind of relationships can be more, and friendships can be more common. So I appreciated that like messy female relationship energy. And finally, my only 5-star for the month was The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. This was the finale to the Poppy War trilogy, and this whole trilogy was just phenomenal. I gave every book 5 stars. It is like one of my favorite series now, and it's just honestly incredible. So if you've not read this, you need to read this. The main character, Rin, is unlike any main character I've read in any other fantasy book, really. She is so filled with rage and fueled by vengeance and revenge, and she has little to no moral compass to speak of, and she will use her emotions to justify just about any action. So she can be hard to root for at times, but she is so interesting to read about. And we have like some interesting magic systems involving gods, and this is also really at the forefront, focused on war and a kingdom that is constantly at war and what that looks like, and the reality of like the nitty-gritty of that. So it's not like other fantasies where it's kind of like, oh, they went to war and they were in their camp and they were like messing around and having a little spicy time because it's just like chill, they're not actually in battle right now. No, in this series it's like people's guts are on the floor, like you're crying because people are dying, like it's rough. So please know that before you go into this, that this is very brutal, but it's so worth it. If you can take that kind of thing, it is, yeah, it just is a very powerful series, I would say. All right, so those are the books that I read in September, and I can't wait to get started on my October reading. Fall is just the best time to read all the spooky things, so I can't wait to get into that, and I will see you all next month.